Well, it's finally happening because we've got neighbors over here behind us in two-story houses that are much taller than us and always looking down over our yard. We've got people complaining about the amount of cars that I have in my property behind 6-foot privacy fences that are designed so you're not supposed to see anything from the street, but what can you do when people are 2 stories up? So I'm going to be slapping this engine together so that we got to put a bunch of cars in storage. I'm just going to slap this engine together, just throw some assembly lube on the important parts so that it doesn't rust out while it's in storage. Get everything back together on it, and we're just going to be changing the mounts on the Rusty Venture project so that we can go from change the mounts from straight 6 to V8 and get this V8 mocked into place with the flywheel and the clutch on it and get it actually mounted to the transmission so that I can fabricate some temporary engine mounts to hold the motor in place while we mock the cab on it too. So if I can get the engine in, bolted to the transmission onto the chassis, then we're going to be taking the 53 cab finally, dismounting it from its original chassis, and then fabbing it onto the 83 K20 chassis, and then that'll be ready to go into storage. And I'll just, whenever I knock out the project I'm working on now and I'm ready to get back to it, then I'll go and I'll pull that out as one piece and work on it. One of the things I'm doing for storage is just spraying the cylinders and everything down with WD-40. Regardless of its purpose, it's going to go in wet. That's for sure. Might be a little while before I get to this thing, so I want to make sure that's just saturated every which way that it can be, and I'll worry about cleaning the other stuff up later. Alright, so I got it all back together as far as getting it dried in. I do not have an intake for this, and so what I'm probably going to end up doing once it's sitting in the vehicle and I know it's got to be exposed to weather, I'm probably going to like double wrap this in a couple of really super thick 55-gallon yard bags and then wrap it over the top of that with that tarp back there until I can get the body sitting over it to cover it up. And even then, I should probably take rags and stuff them down into all the holes and everything. But let's get it back together. I need to get the lift in here and get this thing off the stand so I can put the flywheel, the flywheel and the clutch on the back. And what I'm thinking about doing is just moving all this stuff to over here for a little while, taking this back wall down, putting it up over there, and then rolling the chassis. Just go ahead and just roll it forward to where the lift and the engine is in here, and just make it easier on myself. Well, I had to do some searching around, and I found my transmission mount bolts there, and I found all but one of my flywheel bolts, so that's not too bad. I got enough to be able to mock it up and get the job done. So I got come on, adjust. I got everything moved over here to this side of the shop, and I pulled the back wall down. I'm going to end up reinstalling it over there when I'm finished. And what we're going to do now is try to roll this chassis right here forward and just get the front end of it into the shop so I can use the lift and set the engine down in place. Just as I thought, all 4 tires are locked up on this thing from it setting up. I mean, what did I expect? I've been putting it off forever. So I'm going to jack this up and try to free these wheels up one at a time. I know the rear is going to be more difficult because they've got like some ridiculously huge 15-inch drums. I got the front wheels free, but I couldn't budge those big old huge drums in the rear. So I got the most dangerous thing ever. The Toyota's hooked up to this, and I'm going to see if that little car can drag it. It ain't got about 110 crank horsepower, maybe 80 to the wheels. But we'll give it a shot, and I'm going to have to scoot things back as I get this closer to fit. Will it budge? Oh, damn. Broke my rope, son. I guess that ain't going nowhere. So I guess my rope had been out in the sun for too long. It was, boy, I used to be able to tow all kinds of stuff with just this rope. Came out of a shipyard, but this thing didn't even budge, and I just realized why.
Curse word!
It's in gear. How am I supposed to move it if it's in gear? I bet you it ain't in gear no more. No. Oh my God, Jason, seriously. Dumbass. Back in the stance Toyota tractor. We took the truck out of gear, and now we are going to do attempt number 2. Come on, baby, hold. Come on, baby. Oh, it moved. I know y'all can't see that. I'm gonna have to hold this bitch, but Alright, quick update. I've got this thing pulled up as far as this goes. It's time to move some stuff back. For the actual truck, I gotta pull the engine forward, steer this a little bit, and get the main area of the engine bay over the concrete. So, I'm gonna keep going. We're almost in the garage finally. There we go. Come on, bitch, get in there. Get in there. All right. Look at this idiot here. Look at this idiot. Look at this idiot. Look at this rope. This used to be an awesome rope. Look at this. The dogs did help me out a lot though. Anyhow, let's see, we're still strapped up. I think I need to want to go about another foot, honestly, and I'm gonna cut the steering real hard, and I'm gonna call that good, because then I have enough room to work and get the engine stand in here. I mean the engine lift, chop off the excess bullshit. I almost finished getting the back wall up. I gotta go inside and find some more zips. But funny thing is, ran over my brand new can of WD-40, so it's ruined. And these wheels never turned. These rear drum brakes are so freaking locked up. Apparently gonna have to do a lot of work on this thing in order to get them to roll again. As you can see, they dragged the entire way. They never broke free, not even one time. Which really sucks, because I used to drive this truck. Like, y'all seen videos of me doing burnouts in this thing. Anyway, that just means more work. Well, I wasn't going to start filming yet. I was just going to get some stuff out the way this morning, but I can't see. But check this out. I cut this pipe open to remove it, and it's half filled of water that froze into ice. Look at that block of ice that just fell out of there. That's crazy. So I bet you there's more down there that slid when I pulled this up, but yeah, my exhaust is full of ice. I don't need it anymore. It's junk. So look at that. That's how big that thing was. So I didn't know it, but I had me a cold air exhaust. Screw it, intake. Cold air exhaust is where it's at. Alright, quick update. Just removed my gas tank. That was worthless, because that new chassis just literally fits just over this frame rail from side to side. As you can see, the shape of the back of the cab right there hugs the frame rail over here pretty well. I measured it out, and it's going to sit just snug, so that means I'm going to have to make brackets and do a rear mounted tank, which I have a rear mounted tank in the back. I think I'll have to do that as well before transportation. We'll find out how much time I got before all this stuff goes into storage. So next thing I'm going to do is move this tower here. You see how they're offset? It's not directly across from each other. That's because this is how a 292 straight 6 mounts in. So in order for the V8 to line up, I just unbolt these 2 bolts here, and the lower bolt's holding this to this brace here, and I'm going to move it down to here. Now, this cross member also is different for a V8. I'm going to have to change that later on a different date, even though this one appears to be riveted in permanently. I might just end up making some adapter plate stuff going on. Got this whole thing unbolted. Now I'm gonna move it and see how bad the frame is underneath, dirty, and okay. So, you know the rule here. I'm not gonna be able to put anything back until I wire brush, clean that, and at least paint it. It looks like so much of this brake line is gonna get replaced, just because it's really pitted right there. I don't even know how I was driving this before, like out doing donuts and driving like a complete asshole. This thing is about to collapse on me. It's a miracle. Alright, so I now have this piece mounted into here, and that's all we're going to do for now, for today. On a later date, I'll be putting in some shims between here and here, and I'm going to drill a hole here so I can bolt them out here. Then I'm going to weld in a plate, or make a plate to bolt, weld in a plate here, or make a plate to bolt into this hole so that I can run the other hardware into here to keep this from sagging down and to simulate that it's still into those two holes there. Engine in the air, I need to go find my throw out bearing tool for Chevy, and gonna get that flywheel and clutch on there. I got all but one bolt, but remember, this is just a mock-up because I got to put this thing in storage. But this is good that I'm doing all this because it'll give me an idea what I need when I'm ready to finish the truck. In other news, I'm a complete moron because I realized I don't have a pilot bushing to put in here, so this is definitely going to be temporary and not entirely proper or correct. I'm just going to be putting in one of these guides just so that the clutch goes in straight and bolts together correctly, but in no form or fashion will it be functioning at all right now as far as it running. The engine doesn't run, the clutch isn't going to work, the rear end is locked up, the truck doesn't roll. This is like the worst vehicle ever right now. I was like, why am I even putting it all together? Well, tell me what I need to do to it, make a list of to-be-dones, and get it the hell out of here. Alright, so how to preserve a flywheel during storage, but how to ruin your clutch. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket right there. Put that bad mother in right there and you're gonna ruin that clutch. How to preserve all this and ruin your clutch. So this thing is, like I said, it's going to be in storage. I don't want it to rust. I don't want this to tear it all the hell up. I'll get a new clutch, but I'm going to preserve my flywheel, my clutch plate, my pressure plate, and my flywheel. Now let me get this jazz on here. Let's get in here, show you guys proper flywheel installation. Take the flywheel that's saturated in WD-40. Look for the pin rod hole right here. Rotate it around until it fits. Pinhole, I'm gonna have to. Oh, there it goes. All right.
Okay. Now we're gonna take my hardware here that's not saturated or Loctited. It is now getting some W40 on. There we go. I'm gonna take my non-Loctited hardware. And I'm gonna screw it into the holes like so.
Now I'm gonna go get my torque wrench. I'm gonna torque these down to spec. All right, we're gonna pretend this is my torque wrench. And I've already, at this point, I would be inside on the interwebs on Google looking up what my torque specs would be on this crankshaft bolt.
Tighten this flywheel down on here like this, and you want to tighten things down in a starred pattern, like just as if you were changing a tire, so you can evenly press the tension. All right.
Now we have our flywheel on, and our bolts are not thread locked, and our bolts are not tightened to spec, torque to spec, sorry. We're now going to go get our pressure plate and our clutch, and we're going to make a clutch sandwich out of here, out of this with some WD-40, and ruin that bad mama jama. Be right back. And since I'm not doing so many things, I've decided to go ahead and not put the actual clutch in. So we're just going to put our pressure plate on and bolt it into place so that we can go ahead and drop the engine into the chassis here, so I can make some clamshells. Alright, now that we do not have our clutch in, but we do have our pressure plate on, and everything's wetted down with WD-40 for storage, the issue is I don't have any clamshells. That's the pieces that bolt in right here to hold the engine to these mounts right here. So what I'm going to do is use the stand to drop and lower the engine in place, and then bolt it to the transmission as if I did have clamshells, and use the engine lift to adjust the height. If you're buying Harbor Freight tools, I feel bad for your son. I got 99 sockets and a 10 ain't one of them. And there we go, folks. Got the engine mated up with the transmission with only 4 out of the 6 bolts that I need to match the pressure plate with no clutch, to match the flywheel that only has 5 bolts out of the 6 that it needs, to match the engine that's full of WD-40 that doesn't run, to match the rear end that's locked up and doesn't turn. So, moving on. Alright, so what we've got to do here is to take a pattern off. Now you see these bolt spots. Let's see, right there, here, and here. Well, I got some cardboard. We're going to press up against that to get the location of those 3 spots so I can make my first plate that's going to go onto the engine. And the good thing is about this pattern is I get to cut it out twice because it's the exact same as it is here on the other side. So let me get that going. So I got my spots marked. It's easy whenever there's a little bit of oil on the block where you need to know where your holes are going to be, and it leaves the marks perfectly on the concrete. So the next thing I'm going to have to do is get a square and square off the top from these pieces here, and then measure how wide I need to be to make sure that I know where my square is and how wide this first plate needs to be. Got my pieces marked down, my holes drilled out. All I did was put my piece down for my cardboard, traced it out. Did that twice. I'll use a step bit to drill these up to size, so there's like as little adjustment as needed as possible. And then I'll just come through with the angle grinder and cut these out. And we'll get it bolted onto the engine so we can mock up with more of this LaCroix cardboard. Here's a tech tip for you. If you don't have a workbench with a bench vise, drill all your holes first after you've measured and marked them, so that you have all this weight to help you hold it down, instead of cutting the plate first and then trying to clamp it to something. Way easier. Now that I'm all done with expanding my holes, I just cut it all out and I'm done. Now I got my Ghetto Fabulous plates cut out and drilled to fit nicely in this spot right here. I'm gonna get my hardware and bolt it into place. We're gonna get cardboard and make patterns for the side pieces for my Hoodoo Ghetto engine mounts. If you look down here, you see I put a wood block between the cross member here and the oil pan, because that's how much space I want the oil pan to clear the cross member. And I split the difference on each side from here to there, from the center of the bolt to the steel plate. So now it's time for me to make some, some side pieces out of some cardboard. Make sure that they fit well first, and then cut them out of steel. Alright, so it's crude, but like I'm literally just need these things to hold this engine temporarily while it's in transport. So I got my pieces cut out. It's going to fit in right there where the bolt is, where the hole is. 2 of these pieces cut, right? And I went over here and I got anxious and went ahead and mocked this side in place. And you can see it fits really nicely, and it even fits the notch of the mount itself, so that it can do its job. I mean, honestly, I could probably just add to these later on and actually use them, even though right now they're just going to be nothing really too serious reinforced or even welded up beyond the seam as far as reinforcement goes. So yeah, these are really crappy. I'm not going to use these. Whenever time comes, I'm just going to get the proper clamshells that I need. This is total junk. I only spray painted it so that it wouldn't rust, because where it's going is very moist. So now the engine's sitting all the way to the engine sitting on the suspension, and then the Ghetto Fabulous, mounts that I'm not using. I want to show you how close I got, even though the mounts don't look that pretty at all, but just scabbing in there and making sure that things were quasi-correct. I don't know if you can see that bubble, but it's a little to this side of the level in the center. So when I move things up to the top of the engine here, look at that. It's a little to the side of that line to the center. So the engine level matches the chassis level sitting on this unlevel concrete. So I'm happy with that. So the next thing I've got to do is to clear off all this junk on the back of this and start figuring out how to dismantle that cab over there. Door off already. It's pretty easy. Just had to take these bolts out right here and these bolts down there, and the door just like slid right off of these heavy metal tabs here and there. Then I removed these two bolts right here, and they're actually holding the hood hinges in. They built up right in there and right there. I'm going to do the other door and the other side. We'll have the doors and the hood off here in no time. Go, coming apart pretty easily now. These inner fender wells, I believe, yep, they bolt right off the front here, and that's all that's holding this radiator's cradle in. And looky what we have here. Why, I do believe, let's see, that's a timing cover. Oh wait, the valve cover goes all the way to the top. Why, that's a 216. Look at that. So this actually probably is older than a 53. The title I have for it is a 53. That's how we're going to be doing the paperwork, because I have a new from the factory plate to go on it and a title to stamp the numbers on there. But this thing actually looks like it might be anything from a 49 to a 52, having the fact that with the fact that it's got a 216 in here. That's pretty cool. So we're not pulling this 216 out of here. I'm actually hoping to sell this 216. I don't know if I'm going to be selling it to the gentleman who has all the 1950s cars, so he can have a backup engine for his 1950 Chevy Deluxe, or if I'm just going to end up selling it on Craigslist. Also, and I might do the engine with the chassis all in one, but I'm definitely keeping the deep dish 6-lug wheels. And I'm looking down here at what I got to remove and disconnect from the bottom. And it's not much, but there's one thing that's really disturbing me. I changed that steering column on that 1960 F100, and well, you have to remove everything from the top up here, and the steering column has to come out from the bottom. And I'm pretty sure this one is the same way. I'm going to do some research, but I might have to just completely just take this stupid freaking steering column apart just so I can get it out. Next day, and it's gorgeous out. Got this side of the cab loose already. Let's see if you see it. Move it. Oh. Yeah, it's kind of a solid cab. Anyhow, what I gotta do next is get this dead avocado tree out of my way, remove the steering wheel, and figure out how to either lift the cab up off the column or to remove the column and pull it out the floor. So let's see how that works out for me. Steering wheel off already. It wasn't bolted on, but I couldn't pull off by hand. I ended up using a Pitman arm puller, actually fit over it like this perfectly and fit right on there in order to get this off without any struggle whatsoever. So what I had to do was disconnect, unbolt the shifting mech here from the column off of the main part of the column, disconnect the transmission from here, and undo these two screws up here at the top of the column, fishtail that piece out there. Then once the steering wheel was off, I went down and I popped off the steering piece that connects to the actual gearbox and removed the hardware that held the gearbox on, and it slid right on out. We are ready. Let's see, what is this? I gotta pull this out, whatever that is, but we are ready to lift this thing and try to get the transfer done. Let's walk it forward, guys. it's up there and it's way too high in the front, it doesn't fit. So I'm gonna have to surprise. But anyhow, I'm gonna have to get in here. I'm gonna lift the front end up on some blocks and cut a lot of firewall out until I can get the bottom to sit down in there next. So y'all can follow along and see how far along we get with that. But all we had to do is get that stick shift to clear the firewall right there. So I'll probably end up cutting a big half circle in right there and go from there. So this is where I'm at. I found some old body mount bushings in the back, and I put them in to where the body mount bushings went to for the square body cab, and they're so perfect. Look at that. Gave me just enough room, not sitting on my fuel lines that I'm going to end up getting relocated, but it gives me enough gap, and you see it's perfect. So what I've got to do that I've discovered is these frames dip, as I'm sure I think I've probably covered in the last within the last clip. See, they dip real low. So right now I'm only sitting on the transmission bell housing, but this is where I want my floor to be at, is right there. So I'm not going to cut squat. What I've got to do is build up these old rusty mounts up to the point where they're holding onto the body here, which there's hardly any body left there to hold, but y'all get the idea. So we went digging for more of the pieces of 3-inch lift off the Tahoe, and look, I stacked everything up, and then Robert stacked that side up over there, and the truck is sitting where it needs to be sitting. You see the firewall is going right to the transmission, and that transmission sitting to the floor like I feel like it should be anyhow. I can tell by standing here that there's a little tilt to the cab. It's got like a little lean forward, but I don't mind that. What we're gonna do next is very carefully, well, we're gonna make sure that these are stacked cleaner, but we're gonna very carefully try to put the hood on so we can see what our clearance is to the engine and the front piece. So yeah, we just need to put the hood on so we can look for fitment. Look at this guy right here. That is some sexy shit, if I ain't ever seen some sexy shit before in my life. So yeah, I see that I've got some trimming to do. I like the leaf springs are gonna poke out the front kind of like an old Land Cruiser. That's really dope. This thing looks amazing. This is the icing on top of the cake right here. So we've got to go get some all thread and cut and weld some steel plate in so we don't crush where the body mounts are going. And to be honest with you, we should have this done today. Get everything together. So in a nutshell, here's what's going on today. So this is really flimsy and breaking off in several different places, and you see it's been poorly tack welded. What I'm actually going to do is clean up a lot of this stuff, and I put in this piece of 4-inch channel iron. This is some really thick stuff right here. Tacked it in across all the way, and it's going to be what supports this piece of steel that was here originally just to cover up the hole. But what I'm doing today, so I'm going to take some angle iron to make a homemade brake with some C-clamps, and right here at this line, this is 2 inches, and I'm going to fold this up so that it matches the angle transition from here, and I wanted to have that 2 inches up here so that I can tack weld, just do like spot welds all the way across for it to hold. Now you're probably wondering what I'm going to do about this. Well, that's cool because I marked it here and here, and I'm going to measure and just cut me a hole back here so I can drop this piece in over the stick and have it set into place. And this is what actually was going to allow this thing to be transported without falling to a million pieces. The other thing that I've got to do is anyhow, make sure that I line up the cab where I want it before I put this plate permanently down in the place, and then drill this out, and then drill the same spot out on the floor itself. And I've got this giant all thread. Is it stuck in there? Not on this side, but I bought some all thread, and I'm going to run all thread all the way through this stack of mounts. Remember, this is all temporary until I get a chance to build this up. I know it looks rough, but you got to make a way out of no way. This is my steel. This is where my shifter's coming through. I'm hammering this up to try to match the angle on the floor of the truck. You see I just did my first section. I'm moving this down further so I can beat this section out. Then I'll beat this section out. Once I think I'm close to matching the angle, then I'll cut my hole out and we'll drop this into place, and if it fits well, we'll take it back out, go ahead and line the cab so we can start trying to mount it for good. Not too shabby, so my lip overlaps. Alright, so here's how you mark your holes. You see I got my steel in place that I bent on the breaker, temporary floor. I know I'm going to be tacking it in, but that's nothing I can't cut off and grind later. So what we're going to do here is take our rod and we're going to put a bit of grease on the end right there. I'm just going to stick it up through the hole and bump it against the bottom of this thing a few times so I can get my mark. So let's get to that. Alright, it's hard to see. Wait. Right there is my little grease spot. That tells me where I should start my drill at. So we go ahead and drill the hole here and drill the hole over there. Too late to turn back now. You see I got my hole here. If you look down there, I should be able to line it all up. It's a little off, but it'll work. So I cleaned up this spot right here that was actually part of the structured frame, or you know, kind of like what's left of it anyways, because there ain't squat left right there. And I got it cornered right here onto this piece of floor. And so you see the rest of this has been forced to lay down. And as I come out over here, I'm notching this so that it fits into that groove here, but I've hammered these tabs around, and I'm going to tack weld those into place and do that periodically as I go down, like I said, because I don't want to put this in permanently yet. I still have to figure out certain access points, but this is going to definitely make sure it gets there in one piece. So let me get to work. So I haven't had to weld anything yet except for that very far corner, and I've just got my bolts in here and here, and this thing is attached very well. This is not how I'm going to be driving down the road. I left my wood blocks in for the time being so they could sandwich in, just to make sure everything's even more secure than it would be. And at this point, I'm really seriously debating even if I should even bother welding this in or not. It's gonna get real interesting now. So I've got the radiator cradle pulled out because I'm trying to get it lined up. So what I did, miraculously, this big old chunk of metal in the cross member, I cut it out. Now there's still a cross member there. It's not going to be as strong as it used to be, but I'm actually filling this back in with, I cut this to fit the radiator cradle that's braced and it's going to be used to cap this off. If it looks bad and it's too sloppy, then what I might do is just go ahead and steel plate this and make it bolt down. Oh, wouldn't you know it, I nailed the shape right, but I just cut too damn much. Oh, do I have sound? That's a zoom. So what happened yesterday when I was too tired, I cut too much metal out of right here. So what I've done this morning is I've cut this template in. It's going to hold on, weld back into place right here. And I have some 1-inch channel iron that I'm going to set on top to create a cradle for the rad brace to sit into. And then once I tack this in, the hood and the rad brace will be level, and I can start trimming, and I can go ahead and just tack weld them in so it doesn't go nowhere, and get my side fender, my inner fender wells bolted back in, so I can wrap this bad mama jama up and move on to the next vehicle that's got to get ready for storage. My piece tacked in. But not without being blinded first by my welder. Not my welder, my helmet. I think it's going bad. I'm going to try to clean it up, see if it'll work better. But my piece is in. Now I'm going to go ahead and measure and cut me a piece of channel iron to fit the cradle, the top of that, for the radiator cradle to sit into. Alright, so this is what I got going on. Here's my channel iron. I notched this in to fit over the top of that cap. And then this one comes pretty close right up to the end of that. So I do have a little bit more shaping to do. As you can see, it likes to swing high in the middle. It just means I need to bend it more there and bend it more there. But so this is my cradle now that I've going to be tacking in place, and the radiator will sit right. The radiator cradle will set right into there, and that should be the correct height. So this hood should just shut normal, and I'll be able to take care of my inner fender wells now. I got the hood to kind of clasp. I know this video's long, guys. Sorry, but you can see I got the piece
has almost come through. Focus, 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 focus. But that's lined up. That's the hood knob that comes in there. That's lined up, and this is level. So it turns out that this piece needs to be that far back, and well, I'm not that far back, but you live and you learn. So I'm gonna make a quick little couple tabs to go in between these holes with some bolts coming up through it, so I can bolt that down, and I'll be finished with that. So I've completely cheated. I tacked in the channel iron in right behind the cradle that I had made, and I put some all thread on the top of there. Remember everyone, like, most of this is just temporary. It's just to make it strong for the time being so I can transport it to storage. So let me get my cradle in here, bolt it down. If everything lines up and fits right, then I'm gonna leave that there, and we're gonna go ahead and jump on the side fenders, because I think I about nailed it, like literally nailed it really well in the right place. So whenever I have to go to rebuild all this, it's going to be done properly, but at least I know where everything goes. It's a good fit. Man, it's a good fit. Oh, lighting. Alright, it fit really well. So all I'm going to end up doing later is put some rubber bushings in there and to be able to tighten it down, and then I'll actually trim up this piece and make it look like it's more one with the chassis instead of just being tacked there in place. So as you can see, these inner fender wells are really tall. So what I'm going to end up having to do is cut out most of the bottom of this thing to fit up and over the chassis, and this whole inner flap right here is probably just going to end up going. Looks like it's going to be pretty easy. I've already cut the front piece off where it used to widen out for the grill mount, which we're not going to need any of that. I'm making my own grill and stuff. And so the next thing I'm going to try to start with off here is just to start from here and to cut straight across and hack that off there. Now I'm going to come straight down here and then cut that section out right there, and I'm leaving these two holes because they mount. So let me get that cut out and let's try to fit it. Boy, look at this. Is that not a nice clean fit for an inner fender well, or what? Anyhow, like I was saying in the other part, I've got to cut a hole for the steering column, but that's going to be after I go ahead and fit this one in. So I have my uncut inner fender well here, and I've just got to get this side done. Luckily I don't have it stuffed in the way like I did over there. I swear the older and blinder I get, the straighter I cut. I eyeballed all of this. There wasn't a single tape measure used in the making of this truck, except for to get the body square. But that's not too bad. That little gap you see right there, we're going to fill that in with just like literally some old rubber from some engine compartments off of other cars, the same way that they do, where they'll drape the rubber into some holes all along the bottom of the steel inner fender well and let it hang over the chassis. So that side's done, and y'all already saw that this side was done. Changes the look of the truck entirely when you actually get that compartment filled in. You see, you can actually, it feels more like a put together vehicle. So I'm gonna go look around at the logistics of getting the steering column in here and see if we're gonna include that in on this video or not. Like I said, I apologize guys for the video being so long this time, but I've got a lot to do in a short amount of time, and so I've got to try to put it all in these videos if I can. Alright, it's the next and final day of this temporary build and mock-up of the 51. These Swiss cheese fucking floors. Anyways, oh, you didn't see that. So my stick's close, right? But that's because this body's way more narrow than the other truck was. That's not a problem. I'm actually going to heat this up and bend it the way I want it once I get the truck to where I need to get it to be. And the steering column also kind of goes this way a little bit because of the narrowness of the old chassis. So what I'm going to do is widen the hole in the firewall and just shift angle it a little bit that way, just enough so that it'll hook up cleanly. Let me show you. So you can see right here that it's how it gets real close to the engine. I mean, my hand is touching both sides right there of the thing. So I'm going to take this hole here and I'm just going to go ahead and round notch it out so that the steering column can go ahead and kick a little angle this way in order to line up with the actual column. Now, I thought I was going to have to come up here and be fancy and cut some circle in here, but it turns out where that dip right there is where I need to cut. You see I already drew a little circle. I need to cut that out right there because this is almost touching and connected. Isn't that great? So it's not going to take much today for us to have a steering column and get this thing to be able to steer. Alright, that was so easy. It needs a little bit of cleanup, but look how well that fits right there. And I'm telling you, my ichrometer is on the money today. Anyways, so let me go ahead and pull this column out of here that I've got posted up so I can notch this thing out and see if we can't get the two connected. I've got this old railroad track jack holding this thing up that I got from my friend Ken. It's a really cool piece that I'm going to end up using. I'm sure very much in the near future. Admittingly, it's not my best work, and I honestly think that I've looked around. I don't have any metal to make any kind of frame to hold this right now, so I'm probably just going to ratchet strap it up through the top of the dash right here for the time being, sadly enough. But let me go ahead and stab this steering column through and see if I can't get it to plug A into B. I was right. I looked around. I didn't have any steel to make a proper bracket with, so I'm going to have to make one later. Until then, we got all this ratchet strap business going on here, and here's our piece. It's actually going to end up over here on this hole. We can just push that rubber gasket over all that when we get all done. Look, oh man, it's like it was made like that from the factory. All right, let's get over here and see what we've got, how easy this, or not easy, this connection is going to be. All right. Anyways, I cut this out real big, and I got it to line in. I just got to put the bolt in out there. It probably isn't going to steer the way it is now. Maybe. I don't know. We can find the key. But if these wheels turn, then that's going to be it for us this time. Let's see what we got here. Put the key in the ignition. It won't start, dumbass. Oh, yeah. Look at that. I got wheels that turn, son. This is coming together quite nicely. Everything seems to be clearing all right. There's some looseness, of course. I'll trim whatever I got to trim out once ever I get it to actually build it. But for right now, that's going to be it. So that about wraps this one up, and it was a long one. I'm really sorry, guys, but I've got a lot to do in a short amount of time, so that means I just have to film it all. And if it's a bit too long, let me know. If it's just what y'all like, screw it, you know, we'll continue rolling this way. But I even hate to do things this way. I'd rather have done it right, everything correctly, the right way in the first place. But what I can say is by getting it mocked up together like this, ready for transport, literally shows me the troubles and issues that I'm going to run into for later. That's going to make this an easier build. So screw my neighbors, I'm going to be on top of this, and they can kiss my butt as far as I'm concerned. And on that note, love what you do. I'll see y'all next time. If you're buying hardware freight tools, I feel bad for your son. I got 99 sockets for the turn.